She was the queen of every classroom conversation, the center of every hallway crowd, the girl whose words could elevate or destroy with a single glance. He was the quiet achiever, always present but never loud, the name on every merit list yet absent from the school gossip. Years swept them apart, carving their fates in different directions, one toward luxury and applause, the other into obscurity and sacrifice. But life doesn't forget its own stories. It waits, patiently, for the moment when masks fall and truths rise. And on an ordinary street, with one cup of tea, pride would be shattered, and humility would speak louder than 1,000 boasts. What if the class topper you once mocked for his silence now stands at a tea stall and you humiliate him again, only to find a truth that could silence your laughter forever? Welcome to Storytelling and Beyond, where every tale peels back the layers of pride, pain, and purpose. If you believe stories can awaken the soul, show us your support. Subscribe now, hit the bell icon, and join us as we uncover what truly defines success. The afternoon was warm, and the streets buzzed with life. Horns echoed from every direction, the scent of roasted corn filled the air, and officegoers hurried across crosswalks with their eyes glued to phones. In the middle of this chaos, nestled between a fancy flower boutique and a sleek cafe, stood a humble tea stall, no name, no signboard, just the scent of cardamom and ginger wafting in the air. Arif stood behind the wooden counter. Dressed in a clean but simple kurta, his hands moved gracefully as he poured steaming tea into biodegradable cups, occasionally smiling at the regulars. His eyes, though quiet, carried depth, like a man who had seen both struggle and peace. Across the street, a shiny black SUV pulled up. Out stepped Ria, now even more radiant than she had been in school. Her heels touched the pavement like they owned it, and her sunglasses concealed the cold sharpness in her gaze. She was scrolling through her phone, looking for the location of a new cafe she had seen online. That's when she saw him. Her steps paused. Her gaze narrowed. Arif? She stared for a second longer to be sure. Yes, it was him. The boy who had once outshone everyone in class, who had received the principal's handshake more than any other student. The Arif Sharma. Serving tea? A slow smirk curved her lips. She crossed the street and stood near the stall, arms folded, letting her presence announce itself. Arif looked up and recognized her instantly. Ria, he said, offering a nod. It's been a long time. Well, she said, voice dripping with mockery. If it isn't the great Arif Sharma. Topping teacups now instead of exams? Arif didn't flinch. Would you like one? She laughed. Loudly. Oh no, I don't drink roadside tea. Just came to check if it's really you. You were the golden boy, remember? And now this? She gestured dramatically at the humble stall. Didn't you have like 5 scholarships? Your own project? You were supposed to go to America or something, right? A few nearby customers looked over. Arif's face remained calm. I did go, he said, pouring another cup. Ria rolled her eyes. And came back to serve tea? Wow. Life really humbled you, huh? Arif handed a cup to a customer, wiped the counter, and looked her in the eye. There's no shame in serving tea. Especially when it's part of something bigger. Ria raised a brow. Bigger? This? He didn't explain. He didn't need to. She shook her head, took a mocking glance at the tiny stall, and turned to walk away. Her laughter echoed behind her. But she didn't know that this was just the surface. The year was 2013. The school bell rang sharp at 7:30 a.m., and the corridors filled with footsteps, laughter, and rustling bags. In Class 12A, students began filing in, the air buzzing with the tension of an upcoming announcement. At the front of the room, a wide bulletin board held every achievement, every accolade, and at the center Arif Sharma's name printed again and again. Best in mathematics. Winner of National Science Quiz. Full scholarship to Cambridge summer program. It was a wall of glory, and no one could deny it. Arif sat in the second row, quiet, his books arranged with clinical neatness. His uniform was clean but slightly faded, and his shoes were well polished though clearly worn. He didn't raise his head much. His voice was rarely heard. But when he spoke in class, every word carried weight. At the back of the classroom sat Ria, surrounded by a group of girls who laughed too loudly and whispered too often. She flipped her hair over her shoulder and rolled her eyes as the teacher walked in with a sheet in hand. "Class," the teacher began with a proud smile, "it's official. Arav Sharma has not only topped the board exams but also been selected for the National Science Scholars Program. Only 5 students across the country have been chosen." Applause erupted across the room. A few boys gave him high fives. A couple of girls clapped sincerely. But not Ria. She leaned toward her friend and whispered just loud enough, "Great. More reasons for him to act like he's above us all." Her friend giggled. Arav heard, but said nothing. He looked down at his book and turned a page. After school, the scene was different. Ria stepped out to the waiting car, her father's driver holding the door open. A tablet waited for her on the back seat. Luxury followed her everywhere. Meanwhile, Arav walked quietly to the back gate of the school. He didn't have a car. No driver. His bag was heavier than it looked, and he moved with the rhythm of someone used to walking long distances. His path led him through narrow lanes, past a broken wall, and toward a small roadside tea stall with a faded cloth roof. An elderly man stood behind the counter. As soon as Arav arrived, the man smiled warmly and stepped aside. "You go study, Beta. I'll handle this." Arav shook his head. "Just 1 hour, Papa. Then I'll revise." He tied an apron around his waist, lifted the kettle, and began pouring tea for a line of regulars. He moved quickly, remembering each order. Less sugar for the school guard. Extra strong for the mechanic. Masala chai for the lady with the vegetables. He didn't mind. It was routine. After an hour, he washed his hands, sat at a plastic table behind the stall, and pulled out his notes. Later that evening, Ria sat in her air-conditioned room, scrolling through social media. Arav's face popped up in a post from the school page, *, "Our pride, Arav Sharma, continues to shine." *. She scoffed. Tea seller by day, genius by night. She didn't know that every night after closing the stall, Arav studied under a dim bulb powered by a second-hand inverter. That he read entire textbooks cover to cover, solving problems in the margins because he couldn't afford extra notebooks. That his dreams weren't about money or fame, but about building something that would outlast both. What she saw in school was only a fraction of him. What the world would one day see, he was quietly preparing for, cup by cup, page by page. And in a few moments, her arrogant world would be turned upside down by a truth she wasn't prepared to hear. Evening crept over the city like a soft blanket, dimming the sharp angles of daylight and casting warm amber glows from street lamps. The tea stall remained open as the sun dipped below the horizon, and a faint breeze stirred the scent of cardamom and clove into the air. Arav wiped down the counter calmly, his movements unhurried, precise. The footpath had quieted. The cafes across the street were switching to soft jazz playlists, their tables half filled with after-office regulars. Ria sat in her car not far from the tea stall, the engine off but the windows down. She was still half laughing, scrolling through old class photos on her phone as she stared at Arav, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. The image of him pouring tea was etched in her mind, absurd, ridiculous, and yet strangely unsettling. A few more minutes passed before a silver sedan pulled up gently beside the tea stall. From it stepped an older man in a crisp white kurta, his gait confident, his presence immediately commanding attention. He carried himself not with arrogance, but with the kind of dignity earned through years of purpose. He walked directly toward Arav and extended his arms with a warm smile. "Arav Beta," the man said, embracing him tightly. "I had to stop by. I was in the area." "Still standing at your father's spot, I see." Arav smiled and nodded. "Always, sir. It's good to see you." Ria leaned slightly forward in her seat, eyes narrowing. Something about the man's tone didn't sound like that of a casual visitor. The man laughed. "You always were too humble for your own good." The boys at the institute still talk about your visit last month. The new pediatric wing, your foundation's donation made it happen. Ria sat upright now. Her smile faded. Why didn't you tell them you were the one behind the medical outreach program in the rural schools? And the mobile clinics? You just disappeared quietly, as always. Arif lowered his gaze. It's not about being seen. The work speaks for itself. The man nodded with admiration. Even after all this time, you haven't changed. A full scholarship to Stanford, 2 international research grants, and yet, here you are, selling tea to honor your father. Ria blinked. The words hit her like an invisible force. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. The man continued, glancing around. Your tea stall does more than serve chai. Every rupee from here goes to your education trust, doesn't it? Feeding 60 children, supporting 25 girls through school, my God, Arif. And you never even speak of it. Arif looked away modestly, brushing dust from the edge of the counter. I just wanted to continue what my father taught me. Service. With hands, not just words. The man smiled with a trace of pride. You've gone far, Arif. And yet you've never left your roots. With a brief farewell, the man returned to his car and drove away. Ria sat motionless in her vehicle, her fingers still clutching her phone, her heart pounding. She looked again at Arif, not as a classmate, not as a tea seller, but as someone she couldn't recognize anymore. Not because he had changed. But because he had always been more than she ever bothered to see. Morning light filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the pavement. The air was fresher than usual, and the street stirred slowly to life. Shops opened their shutters, bicycles rolled past, and the first wave of early officegoers emerged, gripping their bags and coffees like armor. At the tea stall, Arif was already at work. His hands moved with practiced ease, boiling water, mixing spices, pouring rich brown liquid into warm cups. His kurta fluttered slightly with the breeze, and his eyes, as always, were calm. From across the street, she appeared. Ria walked slowly this time. No designer sunglasses. No makeup. No retinue of footsteps behind her. Just a quiet figure in simple clothing, stepping carefully toward the stall. Arif looked up and met her eyes. He said nothing. Neither did she. For a moment, only the sound of bubbling tea and distant horns filled the space between them. Then she spoke, her voice lower than before. Almost uncertain. I came to say. I was wrong. He said nothing, waiting. I judged you by what I saw. Not by what I didn't. I saw a tea stall and forgot to look at the man behind it. He handed a cup to a customer, wiped his hands, and looked at her, not with judgment, not with bitterness, but with quiet clarity. I understand, he said. Ria hesitated. Why didn't you say anything yesterday? You could have proved me wrong. Told me everything. Arif smiled faintly. If I needed to prove myself to you, then I hadn't really grown. She looked away for a moment, the weight of his words settling into her like truth she hadn't been ready to hear. Then she looked back, eyes clear. I'm sorry. He nodded gently. Pride blinds us to people's worth. But humility helps us see clearly. She reached for her purse. 1 cup, please. No sugar. He poured the tea and handed it to her. She took it carefully, both hands around the warm cup. She didn't sip immediately. She simply stood there, holding it, grounding herself in the moment. And then, finally, she took a slow sip. It wasn't just tea. It was forgiveness, humility, and the taste of a lesson she would never forget. He went back to serving others, and she stood nearby, watching with quiet respect. She didn't leave in a hurry this time. She watched. She listened. And for the first time in her life, she learned not from books, not from grades, but from character. Thank you for watching this powerful journey unfold here on Storytelling and Beyond. If this story touched your heart, made you pause, or helped you see life a little differently, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more soul-stirring stories like this one. Hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Because here, every story is more than a story, it's a mirror to the soul.